We recorded this episode of the podcast about 2 months ago to celebrate 10 years of Granite Creative.
Radio will always hold a big part in our lives. I started at MFR, then North Sound, with 6 years at BRMB, which is now Free Radio.
Well, I was at Fourth One, North Sound, Smooth Radio, Real Radio, just to name drop a few.
We wanted to know if the radio landscape had changed a lot in the last 10 years, in particular for voiceover artists.
Have the good old days of radio gone? Let's find out.
Okay, so with us today we have the sexy, sultry voice from the skies, the worldwide renowned, most polite and welcoming Scottish voice there is. It's Jenny Dunbar. We have with us the man of 1,000 voices, who has voiced over 100,000 scripts and has quite possibly the best attic cinema we have ever seen. It's Guy Harris. And we also have the most reliable, charming, trustworthy, a real talent, friendly and kind, and the man with 1,000 rebrands. It's Rob Goldstone.
I just can't find one that sticks, so that's one of it.
In radio, national has become king, and that the local commercials have just completely changed. I think Global and Bauer, Global in particular, they have had about half of their local commercials figures disappear, and that's been replaced with national. And we were just wondering, in the world of voiceovers, how that has affected you on day-to-day life.
I mean, I could say that, years ago when I first started, it was local commercial, one after the other. The phone would ring, are you free? Jump on the ISDN. You do the session, you'd be going, oh my goodness, it's getting to 15:15, I've got another session straight afterwards. The next session would start, local commercials. Back then, the rate would have been, I don't know, £12, £13 a script. And in a day, you could do 15, 20 jobs and just be really, really busy all day long, which is fantastic. But yes, it is very noticeable now because of the lack of local commercial that's just not happening anymore. And I guess when they're doing a national commercial, the producers are saying, let's get a known voice, an actor, a celebrity, because the budgets are there. So from my perspective, a lot quieter. Yeah.
Well, I certainly echo what Guy was saying, that I remember sort of being really nervous every Thursday night that Fridays seemed, well, they were called frantic Fridays in the day. And it was just one job after another. And it was chaos, really. But my Fridays are not like that anymore, I have to say. They're a lot more relaxed. It is officially the start of the weekend now.
You can tell by your social medias, Jenny, because most of your posts on Friday are from the pub, aren't they? So.
The acoustics are really good there, actually.
Joking.
Great atmos in the background.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Rob and I pretty much started out at a similar time into our radio kind of industry. I remember when you started.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
So for me as a producer, it was like Guy said, every 15 minutes I would get in at 9, I would get all my scripts sorted, and then I would have the first session booked for 10, and then it would be every 50 minutes, get my lunch break, and then my afternoons would be like producing everything. So like from me, I totally see a difference. From especially being in a radio station.
Yeah, from a writer's point of view as well, there would be like days that Jenny would say you'd come in and you'd be almost scared to get into the office because you know you're not going to have any time to even make a cup of tea or anything. It was just non-stop. And I know from what we do now, obviously I'm not in a radio station anymore, but we've got our own. But the amount of stuff that we're ending up writing is an awful lot less than what it was.
And it's hugely agency-led. Because they've got the budget, they're going to the agencies. And then the agencies are dealing with the national radio brands. It's what we're kind of seeing.
Yeah, and most of them, because they're in agencies, will write their own scripts and come to us for editing or comments and obviously the radio centre clearance and stuff.
And also they normally say to us, can you put forward 3 voices, 3 females, 3 mails, and then they put that to the client. So we're actually having less involvement in who they go with and who they pick.
I mean, here's a thing, because if Global are not doing as many local advertisers anymore, what about the smaller stations? You sort of community station. I mean, surely they should be upping their game and approaching these advertisers, because maybe the local advertiser, Bob's Garage, or Wendy's Haberdashery, or whatever it is, maybe they've just said, well, we can't afford to go on Global anymore, but that could be an opportunity for smaller stations to step up.
There's
Rather,
no
no
small-
There
small-
certainly isn't up
no
here
small
in
stations
Scotland,
left.
there's not.
And the ones that are,
Yeah.
unfortunately, have got low listeners, or they're not
Yeah,
they're not radioed. So how do they? I don't know how it goes about
Yeah.
getting how much, like, how to cost it for
Yeah.
them.
I think a lot of these smaller, really tiny stations, I think their budgets are so low now that they're actually using people that are, volunteer there and, work there, and then they don't have to pay the voice a lot of the time.
So with the lack of local commercials and more national stuff, I know, Guy, you touched on it, that there's bigger budgets, so they're still looking for maybe a famous voice, a celebrity voice, or anything. But does it offset if you guys were to get one or two national commercials?
Compared to being like a busy fool with all the local commercials.
Is that there for yourselves?
I mean, personally, yeah, it'd be nice to get some of the national ones. I think they just have a bigger pool of people to pull from. I think if we rewind the clock 10 years ago or beyond, well, even 5 years ago and beyond, if you had ISDN, you were very accessible. But now, because you don't need ISDN, a producer can get pretty much anyone. The barrier to entry to be a voiceover is so much more affordable that there are more people doing it, and I think that they want to have. I mean, there was a time where I was on 2 adverts in one commercial break, and you'd think, oh, okay, and I think producers realize that, and they say, well, he's already on that, and that campaign's running for 6 months, so we can't put him on X station anymore. So I think producers can just pull from so many more different places. And then you've got diversity and inclusion as well. So they're trying hard to make sure that
So have you
everyone is
noticed that
represented as
it's
well.
changed from maybe how it used to be a lot of RP reading to producers wanting more local accents, or seen to be more kind of down to earth, kind of approachable voices?
Real voices.
I
Real
think
people.
it's much more, yeah, I think it's a lot more real people-y just now, and a lot less voiceover-y. And that's just from really listening to TV commercials and stuff. It's very, I think it's very young and cool, and kind of, like they're just speaking normally in their own way, as it were. So yeah, I think RP is a bit old-fashioned at the moment.
I think it's here to stick. Personally, I can't see I can't see how it would go now from the more natural style reads and the more real reads, going back to something more kind of formal. If you look at all the trends, and it's true, you do get kind of fashions, and there were periods in the last 15 years where I've been doing it where it was very fashionable to sort of have a northern voice on everything, on the super cool reads and stuff, and then it was a southern voice. And then when certain TV shows were big, you had things like The Only Way is Essex. Well, that was great for me for a few years, but then that comes and it goes, and whatever. But I think the trend is to go more raw with things, and if you see it with things as well online, socials, and TikTok and all that kind of stuff, it's everything is kind of the raw, unpolished kind of way of presenting things. But there is still a place for the more kind of the RP delivery and everything else, and some of the more blue chip brands and other things will use it. But there's been a definite pivot.
Do you think that the RP style then is less radio and is branched into more audiobooks and different areas instead of radio.
It's quite, yeah. I mean, you certainly still see it's quite prevalent in things corporate work, although even that now has kind of moved away. Really, the new trend in that is mid-Atlantic, which means nothing. It's kind of it's someone comes to you and says, "Oh, I'll have that mid-Atlantic, please." Okay, what part? And it's that kind of mash of kind of non-geo specific, which I guess is kind of like the new RP, isn't it? It's no accent to it. In terms of radio, I think it's going to carry on in a natural way. But to be honest, the way radio's changed, and like Guy and Jenny have said, the days of those kind of like, when I started 15 years ago, sort of 80% of my work was just radio. It was just kind of add, and then you'd have, it would be more, the corporate stuff or other TV stuff, it would be less. And now it's kind of flipped. So that's now kind of, that's more the 80% is that, and then the 20% is radio. Just because, unlike Jenny and Guy have said, you've got a wider pool of voiceovers, of talent out there, and actors and everything else, especially from lockdown. You've got the no barrier, as Guy said, to really technology-wise to doing this. You don't have to make a commitment of putting in a hard line or spending 50 quid a month on ISDN or having.
Do you think, though, that the lack of ISDN, so that you haven't got that outlay, the whole change of being able to access it more, means that there is more people doing it, but they're not as talented as what I would class were voiceovers, who have spent their time learning that trade? And you've got the likes of Fiverr, for example, where you could just see a project and go, yeah, I'll voice that, but haven't actually got the skill set behind it.
Yeah, with a USB podcast mic shoved into their laptop.
I think it's sort of free market, isn't it? So people will pay for what they want, but I think there's a kind of misconception out there, and there's a lot of there's a lot of companies and things that will kind of give the impression that, hey, if you come and learn how to be a voiceover, you'll make a fortune, of course, which is the thing is, it takes a long time to learn how to do this, and kind of it's a skill, talking to time and everything else. And I think a lot of us have got backgrounds in different areas. Before I did this, I was in radio from the age of 15 all the way up in presenting. So you kind of hone that craft, and so to go from nothing or working in a bank to go, I'm going to get a Yeti microphone and I'm going to go and voice over. It's a big leap. But that's the way it's going with certain things. But of course, a lot of those people can't provide that service. So it's a kind of weird mishmash at the moment. You've kind of still got this small pool of professionals that have been doing it a long time, new people coming in that don't really know how to do it, and then kind of in between people that are maybe actors and they're doing bits on the side, and much as it was before. So that's the change. But you have got a much broader pool of talent for producers and people to choose from.
I think just going on from what you said about maybe people, you talked about, you brought Fiverr up there, maybe less experienced than people that have been doing it years and years. If the read style now is everyday person on the street, just conversational style, then how much training do they need at that point? Now, that's not applicable for every single thing that gets read. You still need to know, you need to make sure the brand and the message gets across. But if they just want someone to read a few lines in a conversational style, there'll be a lot of people that are just getting into it can do that. I always used to say that years and years ago, there are plenty of, when I was very great, I still am grateful for the work I get. But I was always use the saying that there are a lot of great people out there with amazing voices. They just don't know that they can use it to make money, and that is true. There's some fantastic speakers.
How much of your radio stuff is there producers directing you, or are they just asking for an MP3 emailed over?
I think that's another sad part of our
It's
industry now,
really sad
because
for me. I think that
really is.
totally
And
changed when we lost ISDN,
Yeah,
and then it just became quite
absolutely.
easy. We've got kids. It just becomes a bit easier to go.
As the bill
"Oh."
payer for the
Yeah.
ISDN when you were on for 45 minutes and then decided to do the 10-second commercial, I'm quite happy. But no,
It did used to be very sociable, and it was lovely. It knew so many people in the industry, and it was just lovely. And also, it's you get the best out of someone if you're actually working with them and directing them. And I kind of I feel in a
The
way,
last few, I've actually made the effort to be here and do it through some
yeah,
form where I can actually direct, because again, I miss it as
yeah,
well.
yeah. But I do think you get the best, and I think almost in a way, um, you don't know the extent of someone's skills if you're not there saying, actually, can you do that a little bit more Scottish, or can you make that a little bit faster or more aggressive? Or so as a voiceover, I end up sending, maybe three takes that are different. So it is a lot more work, but I think I still get pigeonholed now as the funeral cancer fostering lady. um, but when you were directed, people knew that you had other abilities, I think, if that makes sense. But it's very rare that you link up with people now.
you don't get the, hi, it's Clem Fandango, can you say the word the 5 different ways with it? But
I miss
that.
Yes, I can hear you, Clem Fandango. Yes,
Do you
of
then
course.
find with the MP3s type kind of way of working that the producer's coming back to you saying, actually, that's not quite right, and then you're to and froing loads more than if you'd actually just done the session for 15 minutes?
I think that does happen, yep. Not all the time, but it does sometimes.
There are certainly a lot of producers that will know what Jenny, Rob, myself, and others that have been doing this years are capable of. And I think that's where that's the difference, because literally 90% of my stuff is all, here's a script, can you send it back to us? And I'd like to think that there's a trust between myself and the person sending it, that we know that this is right for Guy, we know this is right for Rob, Jenny, whoever, and they will deliver it. They'll know how to interpret, and that's the difference of someone that's been doing it as many years as we have compared to someone that hasn't. So yes, I should imagine there probably are more scripts going backwards and forwards with less experienced people. But mentioning about the ISDN and connecting with people, I really do miss it. And often I'll say, but can we do a clean feed link? Can we connect by Riverside? I'll send you the link. Let's just do it. You could do a day of 10 jobs on ISDN, and you'd be starting at 9 in the morning and you'd finish at 5, because those sessions could sometimes be 45 minutes because you'd just be chatting. And it was great. You'd think, right, okay, well, look, yeah, so I'm booked in with Jane at 12. Right, I won't book the next one until 12:45 because we'll have a good chat. But now 10 jobs can be done in sort of an hour or whatever, hour and a half, and then you can think, oh, gosh, what else to do? I've hoovered everywhere now. What else can I do?
Yeah, definitely.
When did everybody give up their ISDN lines?
During lockdown, I was.
Yeah,
I think that's when we
I
did
think
ours.
that's when we did ours as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd been humming and hawing about it for ages, because it was getting more and more expensive. And then my codec stopped working, and I thought, oh, what do you do?
You asked Guy
So
for
I
his
bought it.
replacement one.
I bought a second-hand one. But yeah.
What have you had to branch into then to fill all the kind of missing local ads, I guess?
OnlyFans.
Prostitution.
Guy and I do it together, obviously.
Sorry.
Just to get ahead of the game, 2 for 1.
This north-south agency thing that we run, yeah.
I'm doing a lot of audio description these days,
Gosh.
which is something that I'd never done before, probably started about 4 years ago. But now I'm actually worrying that things like that are probably going to start using AI, which is another thing that's tapping us on the shoulder, I think.
When you meet someone and you say you're a voiceover, what do they think that is? What do they think you do?
I mean, generally they follow it with where will I've heard you, and that's kind of where the conversation goes into. And then I think they realize when you say, oh, you've been in Asda, do you listen to Radio 2? Have you, do you have this on? Have you ever watched this? A guy moved in just over the road here, and we got talking one day when everyone was getting to know each other in the street, and he said, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a voiceover artist. I said, what do you do? He says, oh, I work handling money. It's a money handling service when all the money goes through a company before it goes to the banks and this, that, and the other. I said, all right. I said, what's it called? And he gave me the name. He says, oh, you'll never have heard of it. And I turned around to him and I said, do you have training videos that says where people, you learn about the company? He went, oh, yeah. I said, that's me. And he went, you're kidding. And a few days later, he came back and says, I've just spent the morning listening to you. Which, yeah, I think people are still fascinated by it all. Yeah, I mean, it's so big. When we were all doing radio sort of 15, 20 years ago, that was pretty much it, wasn't it? It was radio and the odd corporate. But now, because voices are everywhere, when you say to people, they say, what do? You say, well, do a bit of on hold, do stuff in store, do documentaries, do narration, explainer videos, bit of radio, bit of TV. And when you actually stop to think about it, you think, oh, and video games and apps and there's so many more places to do it.
It's better in that regard, I suppose. It's a more varied job than it used to be, in the sense of you've got many more formats, and there's it's a very different discipline reading a commercial to an audio. I mean, I just can't do audiobooks. I'm terrible at audiobooks. I don't mind saying it's just not something I'm good at. But they're all very different disciplines, I find, and it's nice to have the mixture, because with radio ads, you tend to be delivering the same, or you're always delivering within 30 seconds or 40 seconds, that timed read, and there's variations on how you read it and everything, but it's that format each time. Whereas everything else, the other disciplines, you have to bring something else to it depending on what you're doing and how you do that.
And before, you wouldn't really think about branching out of the UK because radio was here. So do you find that now, especially post-COVID, that there's more chance to get jobs in the EU or around the globe, as opposed to just having your customers in the UK?
I think that was probably always there, but it's more. And there's so many agencies that have every different language, and there seem to be a lot of agencies, like voiceover agencies like that at the moment, that they provide. They'll do one corporate video and they'll do it in 8 different languages. So and they're usually European based, from my point of view anyway. I liked when you used to have to travel to these places to do things, but in the olden days.
We really don't travel though as much. I think I did 2 jobs last year where I had to go to London, and I got quite excited because I got to a point where work was busy enough that if they said, can you come to London? It was like, it's 2 hours on the train, 30 minutes on the tube, do the session for an hour, 30 minutes back on the tube, 2 hours back up home again. And it'd be like, well, can we do it on ISD? And it would be a bit of a faff. I mean, the job was worth it financially normally anyway, but I'd always be sitting there thinking, oh yeah, but I've got this other job to do and that other job to do. And then last year I got 2 jobs where I had to go to London, and both of them I got quite excited about it. I thought, yeah, okay, let's do this. Let's go down to London and move the day around. And again, I think that was born out of the fact that 10 years ago, as we talked about earlier, when it was radio commercials back to back to back to back, if you went to London, by the time you got there, you might have missed 5 or 6 sessions that you could have got. And there's always that fear of, oh, what if that session was the one where it was going on 10 stations, or the one where I'm now going to become the regular voice of, and who did it go to? And they ended up getting this job that was, so there was always that fear, but I got quite excited about it last year of traveling and going to London.
But I remember somebody saying to me that they'd lost a job because they hadn't switched their phone back on from a session, and they'd gone to the loo and missed the call. By the time they phoned back, they were like, no, we've got someone else. These are the days.
Wow.
You were so replaceable.
That's crazy.
It was easy back then to lose quite a lot of money from either being in a session or, as you say, or on holiday. Holidays were the worst. You would go on holiday and the phone would be ringing and ringing. And I remember taking the laptop and mic with me and being down at the poolside and then going...
I was going to say, the amount of voices that would say, I'm going on holiday, but I'm taking my portable studio with me, so don't worry. That was just the norm.
Well, I used to take the laptop and I'd be sitting there and thinking, okay, it's only 16 quid, but all right, I'll go back up to the room and do it and send it off to them. And that was fine. I mean, my partner at the time got a bit fed up with it. And I said, yeah, but it's just paid for dinner or whatever. But then Phil Sayer turned around to me at Vox once and he said, stop taking your kit on holiday. I says, oh, yeah, I know, but it's, I quite like doing it. It's work, isn't it? He went, you do enough work during the rest of the year. He says, have an effing holiday. And I thought, good point. Yeah. So I literally, on his advice, I stopped taking my kit after that, and I never took my kit with me again. And yes, I lost money, but his words rang true that have a holiday. And, it's such a legend in the voiceover world that you don't know how long you're going to be doing this for. You don't know how long you're going to be around for. And you need to have that.
I think back in the
separation,
day that I can remember being like overwhelmed by how much work I had to do in a day, and just taking a step back and going, actually, no one's going to die. There is time. If the ad's not on air tomorrow, it can get pushed. The spots can be pushed. We didn't need that pressure. And I think that's changed, and I think that we've now got more time to make commercials than we did. I don't think there's that quick turnaround like there used to be, because you haven't got the sales guy like on your shoulder
on a Friday,
yeah. Or for us, maybe that's because we're working for ourselves. Maybe in a station it's still like that, but I think so many people are working from home now that kind of pressure and stuff's changed, I would say, in the industry.
I like the phone calls where it was, how soon can I get you? This commercial's on this afternoon. Can I get you now?
Yeah, the fax
it's on
and
tomorrow
dial.
morning. Can I get you?
I love the fax and dial.
I remember I've taken a brief, written a script, cleared the script, got it made and got it on air in an hour and a half.
The radio creative has changed. I think I was going to use a term that one of my old bosses used, but I'm not going to use it. Are you going to use it?
I don't know.
You can always edit it out.
Yeah, I guess. Two in a kitchen. So it used to just be, that's what, and they were like, that was just the norm of how radio ads were. And it was like, this voiceover, that voiceover, pretend to be natural and have a conversation about the product.
What's the phone number again?
Yeah. What was that URL? That really catchy URL?
And I love the way they used to always end with a laugh. After they had the two in the kitchen all had a laugh afterwards.
And start with, oh, hello.
Where have you been?
That was your whole Northside career,
yeah?
Pretty much, Picking up on the non-urgency of commercials and jobs these days, that does help for taking time off, though. I mean, the times I'd be driving into town to pay a check-in, because that's what we used to do. You'd pay a check-in that you'd waited 4 months from your one job that
Checks
you'd
in
done
the
with them
post.
back in June, and driving into town. Are you free for a voiceover? Yep, I'm just pulling up back of the house, actually turning around and going home to do a job. But because these days now, I mean, the last holiday that I took last October, I had jobs come in and I said, I'm back on Wednesday. And they went, yeah, we can wait. And that's really nice. That is reassuring to think, okay, well, that's 200 quid, right? and they can wait for another couple of days. So that's quite useful.
It was very much a radio thing, wasn't it? The immediacy of the jobs. It was only, I think it was only really ever in that sector. Everything else had a much longer lead-in time. Always, I always found. And TV ads or corporate, you always had that breathing space. And it was always radio that was I needed it 15 minutes ago, or it's got to be done now. And it was fun, but there was, like guys, it was a lot of pressure. You did feel that you couldn't go on holiday. You did feel that you couldn't go to the, wherever, or because you always sort of had it in the back of your mind, and you knew the phone was going to ring. And you guys are totally right. The amount of times I've turned the car around and said, "Oh yeah, I'm just coming in," or "I'm just on the train on the way," or and to sort of give that always available kind of situation. But that doesn't happen in any other area. I find it was always a radio thing.
I think we were our own worst enemy, though. I've been in sales meetings when that was said to clients. It's a last minute industry. We can turn it around for you, and then we do. And so the salesperson then can go, right, I've done it once, I can keep doing it. And then the producer, yes, there's lots of pressure on them to do it, but they've done it. Of course they have, because they got the pressure to do it, and we found the voiceover to do it. And I think it was sold as, press, you've got a certain amount of days. TV, well, you're never going to afford TV, but radio, we can turn it around like that. And yeah.
Do you think that was a fear by the sales executive of losing that particular client at the time, because there were so many other radio stations and other radio stations in that patch? Well, if I can't get them, maybe X radio station that also broadcasts here, they might win them.
I'm not even sure it was a fight against other radio stations. It was fighting against the sales director saying, "Why haven't you hit target for this week?" Go on then. Yeah. What has been your favourite radio commercial that you've done?
I mean, one recent one for me was Hotels.com, and that came during the pandemic, which, as you know, the pandemic changed everything. Stuff slowed down, and that was pure. I've just picked that one purely as a financial one because it ran and ran and ran all the way through the pandemic, trying to get people back on. And those ones are an absolute blessing because they are very few and far between, and it came during a time when it was getting just a little, sort of.
Have you ever had any sessions that have just gone disastrously wrong? We've had ones where there's been so many people involved that you just don't get anywhere. You don't get the creativity. There's too many people nitpicking over one word, or should there be a pause here?
But I quite like that. I quite liked other people's input, and because it gave you something to work on, really. I think I hate more than anything when I've done something and it comes back and they say, "Oh, we wanted it actually to sound really cheerful and not corporate as we'd asked you originally." So that's the whole sort of like not working directly with people thing again. I think they're my worst. And also when I work with people that I get the giggles with as well, that's never a good thing. When we're recording, if you were at a studio, I remember one, particularly bad one, but it was called Beaver Travel, and I'm sorry. We all found it really funny.
I had, there's various things you can use to connect, like Riverside, like Clean Feed, and Source Connect. And with Source Connect, I did a session with a friend of mine, and just for fun, I changed the password to something offensive. And then I forgot to change the password back. And I was hitting send password to client, send password to client, send password to client. And that would have happened for probably 3 months that they were getting on. Because you don't see that when you're sending it. You don't see that. So my clients will have been getting connect to voiceover guy password.
Who eventually told you?
What?
Who told you?
A client told me. They just said, I think the password's a little offensive, and I'm sat there thinking to myself, oh my God, there was that session. I was backtracking how many sessions and what clients had got that in their email, because you don't see it. You just go send the link and password to client. No idea. No idea. I don't know how many clients I lost during that, but I have no idea. That was probably one of the biggest disasters of, my career then.
When we used to go into London to record and do jobs in there, I remember one time, and it wasn't my fault, we got stuck on the underground somewhere around Holborn. And of course, because you've got no signal on your phone, you can't ring and say, I'm stuck here, I can't get to Soho or whatever, wherever it was. And I remember it started moving, and there was nowhere I was getting on time. I had to leg it from when it eventually started. I had to get out and then leg it across, and I arrived to the session. It was 10-15 minutes later. The client was not happy. They didn't buy the stuck on the tube thing, and I was poor. I was rancid. I was pouring in sweat, and it was and the worst thing was as well, it was a really it was all right in the end. It was a really good job, and I was quite nervous about doing it anyway because it was a big job. But it was one of these ones as well that they didn't send the script till the last minute, so I hadn't had a chance to go through it properly. And they were like, "Oh, it's coming tomorrow. It'll be here. We're waiting for something. Can I just see a rough? What is it?" Yeah, no. And when it actually landed, it wasn't long, but it was complicated and it was tricky, and it was very nearly a disaster. But it was all right. It got signed off in the end, and I think I went and had a beer after that and a bath.
Where do you think radio will be in another 10 years? What do you think will change? What about the different kind of technologies? You said about AI as well. We don't have much experience with it other than a client did mention for airlines, wasn't it, that they were contemplating trying to go into AI so that they could change it quickly across all different kind of languages, and it wouldn't incur the same kind of costs.
Don't get me started on AI. I've done too much reading on AI recently. It's interesting when people go, yeah, but it sounds clunky. Yeah, it might do right now, and someone might be watching this a year from now, and it's going to get way better. I've heard some incredible examples of it, and it really is. And I also, my YouTube history is appalling with AI videos and podcasts on it. There's a particular company out there that are letting people buy credits to unlock voices that they can use. But to do that, you have to read some scripts to gain credits. What do you think they're doing with that audio that people are reading? They're just training their model, and they're saying, oh, great, that's a different voice, that's a different voice. And one day they will open the window and they'll go, here's 10,000 voices to choose from, all of which are associated with no one because they'll have signed it over when they said, yeah, I'll read these scripts to unlock Joe Biden's voice or Morgan Freeman's voice to play around with. The technology is crazy. Though I was playing around with something this morning where you can chat GTP. I mean, that's already a big thing now, and depending on when you're watching this, it's probably going to be even greater. It allowed you to write me a 30-second radio commercial for Bob's Garage, talk about a sale this weekend, give this telephone number, put some sound effects in there. They need to mention there's a bouncy castle going to be there for the kids. Ding, 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 ding. It generated the script, even with sound effects in. Then it said, would you like to add a voice to it? So you could pick a voice. The voice read it. Would you like to add background music to it? Add background music.
Terrifying.
And it mixed the whole thing. So that could be a client saying, I want to create a commercial. That's the early stages.
I think it will get to a point with and our industry is a very small part of everything to do with AI, but anyone in the creative sector, and artists and everything else, you see what their AI is replicating on the visual front, with computer games and everything. It's going to get to the point in fairly short order where you just won't be able to discern the difference between human and AI generated content, whether that be in a game of voice, anything visual, which is terrifying. Not only from a career point of view, from anyone working in the creative industries, but also just from a human point of view of And I, for one, would like to say I'm fully behind our new robot overlords. If anyone's watching this in the future, but there's a lot of change happening, and some of it will be good and some of it will not be good. And I think it's a very hard thing to regulate.
I think
I
there
don't know how
was
you regulate
there was some
something like
suggestion that you
really. I
could
don't think you
actually
can.
clone your own voice and then you actually owned that. So that because the problem is proving that that's your voice. I did a text to speak, I'm afraid, text to speech about over 20 years ago, and I did it was for the university, and they were developing a software for people that had MND and couldn't speak for themselves anymore. But now looking, because I did that, it was months of work, to be honest. But now I'm thinking, oh my God, that seemed so amazing at the time, but I can't remember what I signed, or so soon every robot may sound like me. I don't know, but it is quite scary.
Again, at the time of this recording, you only need 1 minute of audio to get a good clone of your voice.
Just a
and
minute.
That's quite a minute. And there's some examples of even less than that. There was one I saw the other day of 3 seconds. I mean, it was a bit ropey, but 3 seconds of a voice.
Well, this is uplifting, guys.
This
is uplifting. Oh.
It's kind of changed. So
It is a
years
reality.
Are we all going into?
Yeah, it is a reality.
In 10 years' time, what pub are we all? No, but there won't be pubs. What yoga studio are we all meeting in 10 years' time?
10?
Oh dear.
10 years, gosh. That's very optimistic.
I thought of going into counselling because it's the only thing that's on the up now. I might be a therapist.
Hairdressing, gardening, anything that's a service job. Yeah, it's anything like that.
Unfortunately, we had to cut short the podcast because our boys needed picked up from school. We had absolutely no idea what the time was, just like a good old-fashioned ISDN session.
But massive thank you to Rob Goldstone, Jenny Dunbar and Guy Harris for their anecdotes and their views into their crystal balls for the voiceover future.
That's it for today's The PodGas.